The last two organisms we're going to cover in this unit are Protista and fungi, and we're going to start with Protista. Protista are eukaryotic organisms that can't be classified as fungi, plants, or animals. So they're kind of just their own thing, and they don't fit in any other category. Protista are eukaryotic organisms, meaning they belong to the domain eukarya, and they have a nucleus. They can be unicellular or multicellular, so they can be made of one or many cells. They can be autotrophic or heterotrophic, so they can make their own food, or they can require to consume other organisms to get their food. They have the ability to move using cilia, flagella, or pseudopods, which are kind of like little fake limbs. There are many types of Protista that are alive, and yet we don't know a lot about them as a society. There are animal-like Protista. We typically refer to those as protozoa. These are considered flagellates, ciliates, sporozoans, so these will go on your chart on your notes under examples. Those are examples of animal-like protists. They're animal-like because they are heterotrophs. They have pseudopods. They kind of move around in that same fashion, etc. Plant-like protists are going to be seaweed, kelp, algae, euglenoids, and dinoflagellates. These are going to be plant-like because they have the ability to go through photosynthesis, and they are then going to be autotrophs. Then we also have fungus-like protists, which are slime molds. Those are fungus-like because they absorb nutrients from their environment. These are a few examples illustrating the animal, plant, and fungus-like protists that exist. The top one is animal-like. You can see it has those pseudopods that are going to reach out and grab or different organisms and consume them. The bottom right one is plant-like. It has green chlorophyll to absorb sunlight to produce nutrients and energy for the plant. The one on the left bottom is fungus-like because it has those thread-like structures coming out of it, which does very much resemble a fungus. Here are a few diseases that are caused by Protista. The far left column is what we typically call the disease. So if you have malaria, that's what we just call having that disease. The source is how you get it. So you can get malaria by getting bit by a mosquito, but the actual organism that causes it is the protozoan or an animal-like protist called Plasmodium. So these are the different diseases, the source, and the protist that's going to cause that illness. Protista are incredibly important for human existence. They produced oxygen. They were a part of those first organisms that produced oxygen to allow for more complex life forms to exist and animal life forms to exist that would breathe in oxygen. So they help transform our atmosphere. They also are going to take up carbon dioxide, which is very important to help keep carbon dioxide levels down and keep our atmosphere from heating up too much. They are producers in the aquatic food chain, so they're going to help to produce and provide that basic level of nutrients for any aquatic food chain. But they can also be negative in that they can cause deadly algal blooms. You may have experienced wanting to go to a lake at some point in time and it being closed because of blue-green algae or an infestation of a type of algae that releases toxins and can be deadly if you were to go into it. The last organism we're going to talk about is fungus. And fungus are important decomposers. They provide us with food, and they are also a parasite. Here you can see an ant that has been colonized with a fungus. The ant most likely breathed in a spore from a fungus, and it spread and grew internally and eventually killed the ant. And then it puts up these new stocks of reproduction, and what will happen is when another ant comes by to investigate this ant's death, it will in turn breathe those in and start that cycle all over again. A couple key characteristics of fungus is that they have thread-like bodies. So their bodies are very thread-like, kind of stringy. They do have a cell wall, just like bacteria, but their cell wall is made out of chitin instead of bacteria, which was made out of peptidoglycan. They are going to absorb nutrients from their environment, which means they are heterotrophic. So they don't necessarily consume like we would think of an animal consuming, but they do consume decaying matter in their environment. So they are heterotrophs. That thread-like structure of them is because they are made of filaments, and this allows them to have a big surface area, and they can absorb nutrients from their environment really well. The last thing we're going to look at with fungus is the difference between mold and yeast. So mold and yeast are different types of fungus and different stages of fungal growth. As you can see here, molds are going to be multicellular, and you can see that on the left, that each one is composed of many cells. Yeast is going to be a unicellular, single-celled organism, and the differences often are seen in their appearance and in their reproduction. So just make sure you get this copied down, and then the last part of your notes is to review, to go through and just kind of challenge yourself and see if you can look at the differences between bacteria, protista, and fungi and key characteristics of each.